A
So
sneak
let's talk
peek at what's
about
coming up next.
representation, because there is the stereotype of white males and how they typically present autism-wise representation. And I get there's
I am
a
a
lot
surgeon.
Of that. Yeah, there you go.
See, you going
what's
for the
wrong?
good doctor.
Yeah,
I'm going for motherfucking Rain Man.
What do you find problematic about it? About the character of Sheldon?
Sheldon's an asshole.
Oh, that's why I relate.
As much as society infantilizes autistic men, it allows them to get away with dumb shit. Like they can get away with sexual assault.
Autism is like the one thing that we can all say we're a community together for. And we have to
Right.
include all of those differences you talked about in autism. We have to include it, because if we're not a community as a whole and we keep identifying all these differences about us, then we're not really a community as a whole, and by no means are we going to get the recognition, representation, and or support that we truly need.
Right about that shit.
Right?
And that's the thing people have to come to terms with too.
Yeah.
They gotta come to sight. And I'll say this, I say y'all two, both of y'all are really aware of that shit.
Welcome to another episode of On the Spectrum podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Sven. I've just gotten down from the fjord.
All right, so we're back for another episode of On the Spectrum podcast. As I always start the episodes with, we do not presume to be experts of anything whatsoever. We're just two human beings trying to live life on the spectrum, trying to figure out who
Trying to
we
live,
are.
laugh, and learn.
Yes, there you, man. White girl philosophy right there. All right, so we're man, I got it all thrown off of my whole rhythm. Anyway, so we're interviewing somebody today, somebody who, if you're on TikTok and you're in the autism space on TikTok, you've probably come across his content. If you haven't, well, go over and find this person's content and hit like, follow, share, comment on it, whatever. The human being is rather intelligent, works in childhood education. I should have prepared this better. And let me introduce him. His name is Clinton Bowman.
Yeah, what's good? How y'all feeling? Thank you for having me.
There you go. First and
let me quickly like help you out there. Like I work in early childhood education.
There we go. Early childhood education. Okay. So anyway, Clinton, tell us about yourself a little bit so people understand, and that way I'm not babbling.
Shouts out to the elevator pitch, right? So I'm an early childhood educator. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, 36 years old, turned 37 in November. The main purpose, let me also indicate I got diagnosed with AuDHD at 29 years old, so about 7 years ago last June.
Around the same time as me.
Diagnosed with autism. I got diagnosed with autism a year ago last week. So I'm AuDHD. My main goal on TikTok, on social media, and even working in my profession as a teacher, is just to help neurodivergent people out, because there's not a lot of representation. Especially me being Black, Caribbean Black, and being AuDHD. There's not a lot of representation in there, and there's not a lot of people actually talking about these things and how we can help kids, teenagers, and adults alike with AuDHD and other neurodivergencies to navigate the world as effectively as they can.
So you said you're AuDHD. How does that compare in reception to like 4K or HD TV?
It's like 1440p, right? It's like right in that middle. I can it's like I can upscale my old retro games. You know what I mean? That's what it is. I'm very particular, but very scattered.
I like to think that ADHD we have like picture in picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Like no. ADHD is picture and 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 ad infinitum.
Sorry about the derailing the conversation there with the joke.
No, that's
derailing. That's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it entertaining.
Yeah. So, so Clinton, you wanted to talk about intersectionality?
Well, that's what we proposed originally, but I think based on our conversation prior to starting recording, I think maybe let's just jump to representation, because that's what we started talking about. And somebody out of the three of us, somebody said they'd be able to hold on to that until we start recording.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about representation, because there is the stereotype of white males and how they typically present autism wise representation. And I get there's
I am a surgeon.
Yeah, there you go.
See, you going for the good doctor.
Yeah,
I'm going for motherfucking Rain Man.
Yeah.
Because
I'm old enough to remember fucking Rain Man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually think Good Doctor, if we want to compare the two of those, I think Good Doctor is a much better representation of autistic people than Rain Man. Like, honestly.
What?
I think it's a much better representation than Rain Man.
Rain Man was a savant, which is very rare. So savant syndrome.
Technically, the Good Doctor's a savant too.
Is he considered a savant?
When you see the images float out of his head of like medical books dude has read, I would say that's pretty
like
savant-y.
a typical Tuesday night for me.
Oh my good God. Yeah, I didn't read Grey's Anatomy that often. I'm sorry. Not just a show. It's also a book. But yeah, so we were talking about before representation of talking about like stories, serving the story.
Right.
And the main reason why I brought that up about serving the story and whether it serves the story or not is because we did an interview with somebody and they kept bringing up all these people of, oh yeah, they're definitely autistic. Look how they behave. They're definitely autistic. You can't really say that. And they were talking about historical people, and you can't really call somebody autistic just because a couple of things kind of point out maybe possibly. And then to say, oh, they're definitely in our community. No, they were never diagnosed. We don't actually know. And most of us weren't alive in the 1920s and, knew anything about this person.
And autism is a very fairly recent diagnosis.
Yes.
If you remember, right?
Yeah.
So with autism being fairly recent, you really can't, you can go back and what we know now about autism, we can pretty much say, all right, cool, this person was possibly autistic, right?
Possibly.
We can't say for certain. Like I work at, again, referencing that I work in early childhood. So keep this in mind. There are autism traits and characteristics that, is universal, right?
Uh-huh.
Like the thing is everybody, so one of my mutuals, I think I'm trying to remember her name. I think it's Danielle Arbery. She's like a licensed mental health counselor, right? And she was talking about the intense world theory of autism, right? Because technically autism traits are human traits. It's just the severity of how it's felt, right? So we're
but that's how all disorders function. Like everything that's a disorder in the DSM, that's how it functions. All behavior is human behavior, but certain things, are a little bit more than another.
Right. Classic case of the anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a normal thing to feel, but if it's out of control and to an extreme degree, then you might have an anxiety disorder.
To impact your life, then we're going to call it a disorder.
And there might even be a non what's the medical term there? There may be a good reason for you to have those high levels of anxiety, even if you meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder.
Right.
Like it could just be maybe there's a lot of chaos going on in your life right now.
Right.
Exactly. So going back to the intense world theory, it's just the intensity of how you're feeling it, right?
Right.
So we can't go back in time and be like, okay, these people, we don't know them. We weren't living with them. We only know what's in the historical books. I see children all the time and I'm able to be like, okay, this child's definitely on the spectrum. I'm seeing the way they interact. I'm observing them. I'm in real time. And I'm like, okay. So I had a little girl, and I loved her to death. When she first came into me, like this was last September, we had an open house. I saw her, the way she interacted with everything. Like she was very kind of like by herself and everything like that, but she came right to me. Like only person that she came to right to me. She loved me. She loved me. She felt safe with me and everything because I saw her for who she was. She playing with the toys and everything, and then she'll lose attention, this, that, and the third. But like when I actively saw like she really wasn't speaking a lot until maybe about like November, until like I really was talking and narrating and helping her out and everything like that. But she could feed herself, she can use the bathroom by herself, she can do all that stuff. But it's just more so, like when she gets like frustrated, you can see it come out. So a lot of the times I'm just giving her the space and stuff. And then my assistant teacher like did not understand at all and did not want to hear me. So I was like, all right, whatever, no big deal. It's like, oh, this kid is fine. This kid is fine. I'm like, no, this kid is not. This kid is fine. This kid needs supports. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with this kid. And that's the thing, we look at autism all the time. When we look at autism as a deficit, you know, because like in ADHD too, you know, it's literally in the name, attention deficit, when really it's executive functioning, right?
Yeah.
So shouts out to Dr. Russell Barkley for that. So when it comes down to like the idea of looking at autism as just super amplified human traits, right? You know, everybody has the same human traits. Like, there's people will have sensory things that bother them. For autistic people, it's to the point where it just stops their lives completely.
Right. It interferes with daily function.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what people have to remember. It just stops their lives. Like, for example, I could tell you right now, my ADHD, if I didn't take my ADHD medication this morning, we was not starting this podcast. I'm telling you right now, it is like 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on a Saturday. We was not starting this podcast before 11 o'clock.
It's 11 already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost 11. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like 2 minutes to 11, right?
Oh, all right.
We would not have started this podcast before 11 o'clock if I didn't take the medication, but we were vibing. So that's usually what it is. And that's usually what's a good thing. The other thing is too, I know when I don't take my ADHD medication, I have a hard time trying to organize things. So when we look at these, the way that things impact lives, right? And tie that to intersectionality and representation. Intersectionality is a whole different conversation, but it has bits and pieces in representation.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to, like, when we're looking at ADHD, the way ADHD and autism are portrayed in the media, honestly, is typically very, very problematic. I think the most unproblematic representation of autism was Love on the Spectrum.
Okay, yeah, valid.
Right? Like, there are some things that are problematic for how they are. There are some things that are problematic about it, but like it is way less problematic than, let's say, Atypical. It is way less problematic than, let's say, you know, The Good Doctor and Big Bang Theory and Rain Man. It is way less problematic.
So let me ask you a question on that, because most of those are shows I dig. And I have no problem saying I enjoy the shows, because I think, like, Big Bang Theory to me is one of me and my wife's go-to shows to just kind of cycle. You know what I mean? Because we really like it. It's a funny show. So let's focus on that character a little bit. What do you find problematic about it? About the character of Sheldon?
Sheldon's an asshole.
That's why I relate. Okay, excellent.
He's a fucking selfish and considerate prick. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing about it is, he's like, okay, so we know with people with autism, like, the main big thing is, like, they don't want to be right. They just want to be correct. Right? You know, you don't want to get things wrong. There's an anxiety that's there. But it's the way it's presented with Sheldon. Sheldon will correct you, and it's like an asshole thing. Or he's matter of fact about he's expressing the things that he wants and his needs and things like that. And that's like a healthy way of doing it.
Right.
But it comes off as pretentious. It comes off pretentious and privileged. But then again, that's also Sheldon Cooper being a white guy. So, like, that's one thing. You know, I'm a black person. I'm looking at it from a completely different lens.
Sure.
So, like, I understand that.
So like, with everything you said about it, can't autistic people be assholes, or at least be perceived that way socially? I mean, listen, I relate to that character because I say shit like him.
They can be perceived like that.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I know listen, I went to school with the lowest support needs autistic person that turned out to be a massive Trumper and a racist. Like dropped the hard ER nigga in front of, like, all my peoples. And I'm gonna frame this for you. So I went to CUNY Queens College, right? So, like, the biggest student club at the time when I was going to school was the Science Fiction Fantasy Club. We had connections with every single club because we worked with the student union. Most of us worked as a part of the student union. So we knew everybody. We had connections all over that school. Every club wanted to rock with us. Anytime we had an event, it was the biggest event on campus. Like we ran fighting game tournaments. We ran like, charity nights, game nights, cosplay nights, all that. So, but the majority of the club was like black people from the hood, right? And Puerto Ricans and Dominican and Spanish people and Asian people, Chinese, Hong Kong, all that, right? So when this white boy comes up, this Russian kid comes up, and it's just like after a while, and this is like after I left, but I came back to visit and I heard this, and I'm sitting on there like, yo, that kid almost got his ass beat in the middle of that student union because like he straight up said it like that. And I'm like, yo, bro, I told him like, yo, you better run because you about to get your ass kicked right now. You got 3 black people sitting on this motherfucker. You about to get your ass whooped in the middle of the student union. Like it was like real crazy. It was real reckless. There's like autistic people can be like, there's autistic people that can be assholes. Like autistic men have like, as much as society infantilizes autistic men, it allows them to get away with dumb shit. Like they can get away with sexual assault. They can get away with these type of things because then the way we look at it, like atypical is a big example of that shit, right? You can just explain it away as like, oh, he's autistic. He just doesn't really know. He was having a overload or whatever, however that scene went. And it's like, no, motherfucker, that's assault. That's like, that nigga get arrested for that shit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If it was my black ass and I had a sensory overload situation and I was angry and I was upset and I pulled somebody's head, you bet your black ass, you bet my black ass. You know what I'm saying? You bet my black ass, I'm in fucking jail. I'm in handcuffs and or worse, I'm getting shot like dead ass. Like I'm like, I'm getting assaulted, beat up, all that.
Right.
Like I will always go back to Elijah McClain because remember that happened in Buffalo, New York. Like Elijah McClain just going home, trying to explain he's autistic. He's just minding his own business.
Right.
The motherfucker gets killed by Buffalo police. Are you fucking kidding me? So like, I don't want to like a lot of the times is like that's why I get so mad at like characterizations like Sheldon Cooper. Like I don't mind the Good Doctor because the Good Doctor is over exaggerated, but I can see why people are upset with that character.
Well, but right? Sheldon's on a show that's a comedy, and in a comedy you have to have kind of blown out of proportion behaviors.
Yeah, you gotta have the dickhead if we go back and watch like Martin was Martin was a fucking problematic person, like 100%.
In a ton of different ways.
Yeah. Like I like it's funny when I think about Martin as a show, like like black people like, oh, yo, have a relationship like Martin and Gina. I'm like, no, bitch, the fuck? No.
Yeah.
That is toxic relationship 101. Like, no.
Right.
I think
like, that is the worst.
But because it's a comedy, there has to be, for the writing of it, there has to be moments of tension built into every episode. And Sheldon, in a lot of ways, Sheldon provided that. Now,
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for Sheldon in a ton of episodes, they would just go home, play video games, and then go to work the next day. But
and I'm gonna be honest with you, like at the end of like as it's starting to end, the show was starting to end.
Right.
And I think young Sheldon, honestly, like did not help for me. But like towards the end where like you start to see Sheldon mellow out because of his relationship.
Right.
It's like because of the relationship with Mayim Bialik's character, and Mayim Bialik's a fucking problematic in her right.
Okay.
But like, like not the character, but the person herself, like
the human,
her own issues.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. When they got to that point, like, and Sheldon started to mellow out, and Sheldon really started to realize like how he was affecting the people around him.
Right.
And a lot of that was, but let's be honest. As I'm talking about it with somebody finally, which is a great thing that I'm able to do, I'm realizing a lot of it with young Sheldon too. A lot of it was trauma.
Yes.
So a lot of autistic behavior, a lot of like interaction with the world with autistic and ADHD people and stuff like that is built out of trauma. And it's like things that affect them, things that like the way they were shut down, the way they were shut down, if they were shut down, if they were not in a supportive home, if the people didn't understand them. and understand me, you, Steve, like
Yeah,
me, you,
so
Nick,
there's one
like,
thing I wanted to mention before about what you guys were talking about as far as like the Sheldon being an asshole, or a lot of autistic characters being portrayed in certain ways where they're kind of a dick. But what I don't see, and this is also related to trauma, I don't see as often is people pleasing, because that's a big thing that a lot of people who are neurodivergent do as well because of trauma, or because they're afraid of social rejection, is they go out of the way, and they can easily get taken advantage of. But you don't see that aspect of it as often.
You're not going to see it that often.
But also,
people, the thing about it is no drama in people pleasing.
Right.
No drama.
Yeah. I was just
there
about
can
to point
be,
that out.
but I think it would be it have to be written a different way, because the drama on that is somebody being used or taken advantage of. That could make a compelling story, like showing how somebody is being manipulated or used because of their people pleasing.
You can write. Sorry to jump in. You can write. Like, you can write a very good, compelling tale about like an autistic or ADHD individual as to people please, who was like abused as a kid, like whether it's like neglected physically or emotionally, kids that were like, or late diagnosed person who is just like, who is just having to constantly people please to kind of like avoid their needs being met. Because then, like, again, if we look at the framework of a story, you got to have, like, obviously your setting, you got to have your protagonist, your antagonist, your characters, and you have to have, what is the problem, what's the climax, and what's the solution. You know what I mean? And you got to have that, like, you got to have that scope, that bell curve, that goes there. So when it comes down to it, it can be done. I feel like from a media studies standpoint, from a media analysis standpoint, if you write that into a drama, like, the thing is how, like, people don't really have sympathy for autistic and ADHD people. It's more profitable to make them entertainment or to make them scary, right? Why would I make them relatable?
I think,
what's the money in it for me?
Well, you don't have to come out and say it like we were talking about before. I think before we started recording, is you don't have to. If they're an ADHD or AuDHD character that is coded, but you don't have to explicitly say it. But all the signs are there saying this character is
unless
part of the
story.
Especially if we were talking about a late diagnosed person, sometimes you have to. If you're gonna write a story about somebody that's late diagnosed, like diagnosed as an adult, you have to kind of go back into their childhood, and you have to be like, oh, all the signs are there. And it's like, you can be like, oh, look at this kid could not sit down in classes. This kid could not do this. But I would just do it in a more natural kind of way. I would just do it like a regular way. And like, you go and this kid, like, and you realize why this person was acting this way. You know what I mean? Even if it's a small flashback. But like, you're right, the coding has to make sense, especially if it's a long form story where you're like, oh, this character, like, you're trying to explain why this character is, what's the motivation behind the character doing what the character is doing. And you don't have, like, but that's the thing where autistic and ADHD individuals and people with BPD, NPD, all that stuff, they want that representation. They want to be able to see that on television. They want that representation. Thing is, I think the representation right now comes from social media. It comes to social media when done right, when not quirkified. Because, like, again, like I'm telling you, people are going to listen to this podcast and think like, oh, that black man hates white people. No. I don't. My girlfriend is white. Shut up. Anyways, like, my best friends are white.
Like,
right?
I don't think anything you said focuses that.
Like, come on, like, it's not that. It's just an observation, right?
Yeah. So like, let me ask you a question real quick. Because we're talking about people being coded a certain way, and we're talking about representation. Now, when I'm sitting on social media and I'm hearing people critique autistic characters or autistically coded characters, they always say, well, this isn't good enough because not all autistic people X. And I think that's the real problem with trying to create representation in the media, is we're never, ever, and this is my opinion, I could be horribly wrong. We all know that out of me and Steve, I'm the dumb one. Now,
I say that, bro. Come on, man.
No, absolutely. I'm the dumb one. Steve has a wide breadth of knowledge. I know like this much about psychology. Like everything else in the world, I don't give a shit about. So well, to a degree, I don't care about. Anyway, back to representation. I don't think that we could ever have real, accurate, 100% representation of anything,
Well,
because you have to exaggerate some parts, and you're always going to have a trait that doesn't make
you
sense.
can't have
now.
a person who's a monolith who represents everything. It's like
Well,
you
but
have a gay
that's-
character that represents all gay people.
But that's
No?
why my honest opinion about representation, especially when it comes to autism, is why don't we accept the character in the premise of the story that it's happening, and instead of going, well, this character's a problem because that character does X, and that's not what every autistic person does. You're right, they don't, but this person does, and some of us do. Like the asshole statements, we're holding autistic people to the neurotypical social standard of what is acceptable or polite to say or not say, right? In that regard, if we look at autism having its own social rules, then some of the matter-of-fact way we talk, some of the corrections that we talk about, right? The word correction stuff, because me and this kid used to do it on a regular, right? We would correct those words. Now, again, I'm an idiot, so I was correcting it wrong, which means he would then come behind me and correct me, and then I'd have to, oh, my bad, here's what it really is. But in that regard, some of us do that stuff, but not all of us. And
That's
on
true.
top of that, let's look at autism of having support need levels.
I stopped
right?
being less
Like,
pedantic because of Sun Michaud.
Yeah. Sun Michaud actually changed me as well when it comes to a lot of things. Do you know Sun Michaud? Oh, Sun Michaud.
Yeah.
Okay, you know him. Okay. Yeah.
I love him.
He opens up my eyes in so many different, like, even if it's a topic that I have the right idea about, he still just alters it slightly and makes me go, oh, there's more to that.
Provides a different
Wow.
perspective.
He knows how to speak. He's a very eloquent person.
He's so
Very
good.
eloquent person,
But-
and knows how to get his point across.
Right.
And the thing with continuing that talk about representation, we're having 100% accurate representation. You're right. We won't ever have that because it's like saying all black people are monolith. It's like it's the same issue that all right, Korea has this problem. South Korea has this huge fucking problem with cultural appropriation, because really what they see is the Western version of how black people are represented.
Okay.
Right. We ain't all rappers and basketball players.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. In fact, the vast majority are not.
It's okay. And I'm gonna go across the entire fucking gamut here.
Yes.
Not all trans people are fucking dolls who get plastic fucking surgery. My girlfriend is a plus size trans woman who did not get surgeries and who decided not to, but she was also the first trans model to get a major modeling, plus size trans model at that, to get a major modeling contract with an organization on her own with no additional representation. Right? She did it on her own, right? She's not we're not looking at her like we look at fucking Blair White and shit. You know what I mean? Who she's problematic. Right?
I know. When you bring up cultural references, Nick probably doesn't know any of them. I know who Blair White is, but I know.
Okay.
I assume you know.
Tell me later.
All right.
Well, no, I'll give that. She's a trans woman who is a conservative. It's the whole pulling the ladder up behind you. It's you get the surgeries, you get your gender affirming kid, but nobody else deserves to get it.
Okay.
It's nobody else. It's kind of like Clarence Thomas pulling up the ladder behind black people. Or I made it, so y'all niggas don't gotta make it. Fuck you. It's come on, bro. And then there's so many different types. There's so many different ways that trans people present. So many different ways that gay people present. So lesbians, how many queer people, Chinese people and fucking freaking Semitic people. They all represent differently.
Yes.
So they all it's all a mixing pot of all of that. That's like me saying and forgive me for this, all Indian people talk like this. No.
No.
I am of Indian descent and I don't fucking talk like that.
Right.
Because I was born here. I don't talk like that. Listen, it's my people. I'll crack a joke or two in private, but no, that's not how they do. So when you push for this, we need proper representation. It's I will say it again, and I will preach this to the top until I can't stop. Representation, the truest representation that you will see of autistic, ADHD people, trans people, anybody is on social media.
Okay.
The truest, because, and I'm going to distill it back down to autistic and ADHD people and neurodivergent people, because 9 times out of 10, you're just getting the real authentic experience of it. And again, this shows growth on my part too, because I used to get upset about people having their meltdowns on social media. Because I'm looking at it from it's not, and to be fair, it can be internalized ableism, but I also understand how society works.
Right.
And how, if you have that, people scour social media if you're looking for work. You know what I mean? If you can work. So they will use anything against you to be like, you're not like, someone that can work here. You know what I mean? We don't want you working here. You're going to be too problematic or whatever the case may be. That's where that can come in. And that's where my mindset was. But I understand humanizing the experience is very, very important.
I think,
but
absolutely.
the other side to that, and I'm going to stop after this, is when white women are very fucking guilty of this on social media. When you try to quirkify ADHD and autism, dude, there's a reason why they are referred to as disabilities and disorders. It affects your life in such a way where you cannot function within the bounds of what society is expecting you to function.
Right.
So to quirkify autism, that's not humanizing it. That is basically allowing for people who don't understand what autism and ADHD really is to further dismiss it.
Or people even fetishize it.
Infantilize and fetishize. Damn right.
Yep.
I was gonna actually, I forget what I was gonna say.
Okay. So what I was gonna say with that, with the quirk thing, I've noticed that a lot, and I noticed too, it's a lot of white women. Like TikTok seems to be overwhelmingly white woman autistic. And
True.
a lot of them, you're right, they're trying to take away calling it a disability or having deficits or whatnot. They're trying to take away that language and just saying, oh no, we're just like everybody else, just a little different, right? But that negates everybody who has higher support needs. Like even people who have, moderate support needs, right? Because I know most people talk about like low and high.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
I'm just going to throw it in real quick because it's not important, but
right.
I'm just going to throw it out there.
Throw it out there.
You were talking about the problem you had with people who post their meltdowns and stuff. All I was going to add to that was I think the problem I had with it is not the same issue you had. It was more so like people making a spectacle of it, because people who don't understand it, they're looking at it. It's a spectacle to them. It's kind of like observing somebody at the zoo, like an animal at the zoo.
Well, that's a video I posted a while back. I posted a video about this. It was pretty much like, and it said, and a lot of people agree with this, and like, we are either entertainment to people or we are something to be feared.
And so that's like back in the 80s and 90s, that's kind of what gay people were. Representations of gay and lesbian people. It was either something to laugh at or something to worry about to a degree.
Black people are
right?
still like that. Black people still look like that.
Absolutely. Especially depending on who's writing it. You know what I mean? Like, that can really blow out of proportion quite a bit, that stereotype.
Like fucking Tyler Perry's fucking problematic, but Shonda Rhimes is really good. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Shonda
that's
Rhimes?
the thing on its own.
I've actually never watched any Tyler Perry stuff.
Ever?
Don't.
No.
Oh my God.
Well, no, I wouldn't say don't, because some of it is funny. Like, I would say like House of Pain is a good show to watch, because it's not like it's actually one of Tyler Perry's better series that actually kind of like is real. Real and kind of like it's exaggerated, but it's real. But like the Medea thing, because the Medea really is like a caricature of freaking minstrelsy. It's a minstrel show about Black women anyway. So it's like kind of like showing Black women in this aggressive, nasty light and stuff like that. A lot of it like drama. A lot of it's more drama stuff. It's like,
I know the character, but I've never seen it.
I've watched a couple of those movies. I find some of it funny. But I will say that without the Medea character, House of Pain doesn't happen.
That's true.
Right? And so did Tyler Perry, play his cards right and say, here, I'm going to give you this blown out of proportion caricature of a human being, this thing that people can relate to a point, but also, is that, as you said, minstrel, right? But then we get to things like, what was it called? Why Are You Married? Or something to that effect? Or Why Did We Get Married?
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, and then House of Pain. We can't get to those without Tyler Perry going, hey, look, funny me. Now let's talk about something real, right?
Now that you think about it, now that I think about it, you really couldn't get shows like, shouts out to Norman Lear for this, you could not get shows like All in the Family and the Jeffersons and Good Times.
Right.
You couldn't get you don't get the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You don't get Family Matters. You don't get and you don't get all those other types of shows without like All in the Family and All in the Family and those types of shows.
Yes, absolutely. Without that era of TV, we don't have the shows from the 80s and 90s that actually meant something to people. Right.
Because the thing about it is, let's be real. We look at All in the Family. Like Archie Bunker. Carol O'Connor was a great guy. Like Archie Bunker was such a racist character, but it was so good and so well done.
Right.
And then you get the Jeffersons, where you're showing a black person in where you're not showing a black person in the projects. You're showing a black person on the Upper West Side and shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's good apartment, running their own business.
I think
everything.
People forget that progress takes time, and that people and I was talking about this with you recently, how we're kind of biased towards the present, and we always think about things in terms of what's happening today, but we forget about the past. We always think about how terrible the world is right now, and how terrible everything is right now, and it's the worst it's ever been, and our political situation's a mess, and all these things. But we forget, in history, that we've also had periods of time where things have been just as bad or worse, and that progress is something that is constantly happening. It's not like it just instantly happens.
Everything has antecedents.
Yes.
So that everything has antecedents. So we're saying, for example, you mentioned political things, right? We can say, how did we get here with the Republican Party is where it's at right now. And I think everybody can agree the fact that Obama got elected as president. That's exactly where we got here. Because a bunch of white people got mad, and a bunch of white people got mad that a black person could get to the highest office in the world in the United States. It's black people shouldn't be in this position. You know what I mean? And it's gotten progressively worse. And now we have a black woman
running for president.
Fuck a woman, a black woman going for that same office.
But a black woman ran for president a long time ago too.
She ran for vice president, Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah, you knew what I was talking about, right?
Yep.
I mean, what was that, 100 years ago?
Kamala also ran in 2020 as well, so.
Yeah. But I was just pointing out.
Kamala succeeded with Shirley Chisholm didn't.
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
And it took 100 years to get there, because I think that was in the 1920s. Maybe it was the 1910s.
No, Shirley Chisholm was in the 1980s.
No, I'm talking about the one from the early 1900s. There was a woman, a black woman, who either ran for Senate or I'm thinking about 12-year-old information. It was either ran for president or ran for Senate or was elected Senate.
Those are very different things.
I know they're very different things. But to me, 100 years ago, having an African-American woman elected to any official office, even if it was mayor of a town, was a big damn deal. And so,
because not all women gained the right to vote in the 20s anyway.
Right. And so to have a woman who gets, and I think it was a federal position, I think it was Senate or tried to run for president, but just to have somebody who had some level of visibility to do that was a really big deal 100 years ago. And now we've got a black woman running for president, and we had a black president, right? But I want to cue in on something you said. You said once he was elected, white people got pissed off. I think that was building for a lot of that community, though. Yes, they did. But I think it was building a lot because we're also talking about predominantly more rural white folk that got pissed off about it. But I think it was building from the 90s. And it reached ahead with President
Obama. 90s, it started in the 80s.
Well, if
we take a look at the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, that shit started in the 1980s.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that literally started. A lot of that stuff started around the Robert Bork, when he essentially got borked out of the Supreme Court. He was too extreme for it. Right. And the thing was, and really what it ended up being was you got to understand, Mitch McConnell was really the genesis of we're gonna we're gonna make shit a living hell. And that's what he fulfilled that promise when Obama was president, going out. And the thing about it is it's like there was a saying from one of Nixon's former staffers, is like, if you can convince the poorest white man that they are better than the poorest black man, like you know, and I'm like, the fuck? Like, no, because like when now you're starting to see now in the South and like in the more rural and the more like poverty stricken areas, the white people, the poor white people, the poor black people, they were like, yo, we're the fucking same. Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
I said, no, we're all like Jelly Roll. I think it was like Chelsea Handler's show on Netflix that she did when she went around America and stuff like that. And Jelly Roll was like, yo, look. I said, we are all like we're all family. We're all the same. We all deal with the same shit.
Yeah.
I said, like, you know, a cookout full of like white people, black people, rednecks and trailer people and people that live in trailer, all that shit, just hanging out, like doing barbecue, like eating pork, chilling, drinking Kool-Aid, all that. And it's like, yeah, like me and my girlfriend have this conversation. She's from the Poconos of Pennsylvania. Right. My girlfriend's parents, they from New York. So they moved to the Poconos and whatnot. And then my girlfriend was born out there. And she says, really what it is hood black people and country white people are like one in the fucking same. And I'm like, yeah, this is true. It's just the different setting. Like we're like, it's the same type of poor. Right. But then you have like the evangelical Christian bases. Some of these people in the evangelical Christian, and a lot of them are men, like that are literally like, oh no, we can't, like, oh no, like we're losing our grip on America. Like America is not the same. And it's like, come on, yo, y'all can't be fucking serious. I know y'all saw this shit changing, right? You know that you do realize that no one was fucking with y'all like for a long ass time. And now y'all doing, because y'all got the power and the money. Now y'all want to start making moves to kind of make everybody's life a living hell. Okay, go fuck yourselves. Because I guarantee you, when the next generation comes up, they're gonna fuck you harder. They're gonna fuck you harder than a whore in the middle of a back alley. Yeah. Look. Like, and that's what's happening. Like a lot of motherfuckers are getting owned. And then like this whole issue with Palestine is its own issue, where like we're seeing on social media like fucking like people that are pro-Palestine, like these Palestinian people that don't even live in the United States, shitting on black American women. And like black American women biting back. Like, no, you're not even here. Like, we have our own issues to fight too. Right. We can support you, but we gotta worry about us too. Right. You know what I mean? So that's the same thing. Like, that's the same thing. I look at it like, but like all of that really to say, you know, going back to it, like what we talking, the whole intersectionality argument and stuff like that. You know, we talk about the quirkification. We talk about the quirkification of like autism, ADHD, and stuff like that, neurodevelopmental disabilities and disorders, and how like you know, you said earlier that like, you know, autism and ADHD TikTok is like majority white women. I'm starting to see more black women come out and actively talking about their experiences. Being actually real about it, and it's like that's what I needed to see. I needed to see like, and then like, you know, there's not a lot of black men that talk about this either. So like, I'm one of the very few black men that kind of talk about it on the app and being like, yo, this is what it does for me. Like, you know, I have the stereotypical white man autism sometimes. Like, I love my trains, I love my buses, I love my transportation, you know, my video games and all that stuff. But then there's also
video games are for everybody.
Well, so actually,
I agree with that.
I was just about to say that because like, I hear on TikTok, and you just said it, you know, typical white man autism, right? Yeah. Do you think maybe that partially hurts our community by identifying things in such a way, by identifying with race on that?
Absolutely the fuck not.
Because I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about lately of like when we identify it as you said, a white autistic trait or a white male autistic trait, right? To me, it makes it, and I could be really fucking wrong, but it to me, it just creates another level of separation in autistic community. And that doesn't mean there's not specific things that we as human beings, because we grew up in different ways, do.
Right.
But the trait itself or the part of autism is still the same for us. Right. So you liking trains isn't necessarily a white guy thing, but it is the stereotype of autistic like, people.
To identify the important thing is identifying it that way, because that's exactly what it was.
It was the stereotype of it.
That's the stereotype, but that's what the general public kind of considers that, right? Because like in again, because me being black, black and grow up in New York, I look at it differently, and I hear all that stuff. A lot of it is like, oh, autism is a white man's disease.
Okay.
Only
Yep.
white boys, only affluent white boys have autism.
Right. Right. Because that
And,
was the
and
stereotype.
ADHD and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
that was a common prevalence. And the thing is,
Well,
is
the
like,
affluent white boys had it because they were the ones who actually got diagnosed.
That's right.
Pretty
That's
much.
right. That's right.
right? So when it comes down to it, like for me personally, identifying it like that
Yeah.
is like, yeah, you know, it's a tongue-in-cheek way to kind of do it. I
Okay.
hear where you're coming from when it says it is kind of harmful because it is not necessary. Like, because here's the thing, like there are autistic women that, you know, are fascinated with trains and stuff,
Right.
with the stereotypical boy stuff. You know what I mean? And it also comes to you know, there's also the marketing, because certain things are for boys, certain things are for girls. And that's his own
I think
discussion.
it's
Yeah.
interesting that there are certain like interests that are very common,
Mhm.
and I think there's good reasons for it. But like, you know,
Right.
video games are certain things that people consider to be nerdy or intellectual, or things that a lot of us are
Yeah.
into.
But the thing
Right.
about video games, after the video game crash in '83, like they had to market it to boys because they couldn't market it to families anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
When the NES came out in America, they had to change how the NES looked, how the Famicom looked in America. They turned that shit to a fucking VCR box looking thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like they had to market it to boys because if they tried to market it to families, this was 2 years after the video game crash in '83
What
in the United States. Video games were thriving everywhere else, but America, no.
One thing you said before, I just wanted to just mention real quick too. Remember when we were doing the series for April for
Yeah.
autism?
Yeah.
We did a whole like one video a day for TikTok about
Yeah.
autism. And then when I did the final video, I actually changed. Originally, I was going to do kind of like a call to action, like a
Mhm.
recap of a bunch of different things about autism. I ended up changing it entirely, and I just did a video about people of color, Black
Right.
people. And the reason I did that is because I noticed that when we were doing like autism history and like talking about different things, most of the information I found was about white people.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
go through and I'm like, you know, I wish that I had like more diversity in this. So I did a whole video, and I felt kind of bad because I just did like one video and listed a bunch of people, but
Mhm.
I found I had to go like looking for
Yeah.
Black and people of color who are autistic and create content. And like I went and I found a bunch of people and I made a list, and there's actually a lot, but it's just they're harder to find because
Right.
the majority of the people you see like on TikTok are like white people or white women. And
Mm.
so, but I just wanted to mention
Right.
that.
No, that makes sense because I just literally looked up like Black autistic people or people of color and stuff like that, you know, and
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, I didn't know all these people. Like, I didn't really know all these people that were like a lot of them are not like celebrities or anything like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I'm like, wow, this is crazy as I'm looking at it right now.
Mhm.
And these are people that we really don't know about all that well, right? And which to me is like it's a struggle because it's a struggle mostly because again, that representation definitely ain't there. They definitely ain't there. And then on top of that, like a lot of black communities do not have access to healthcare. There's also obviously the healthcare bias in the black communities, and also like the kind of like feeling against healthcare because, you know, the history of like, you know, the Tuskegee experiment and all that other shit. So like there's distrust in the medical field.
Oh, sure.
You know, so like black people are less likely to see a doctor, or if they do see a doctor, they are more likely to be like just pushed out because like the medical bias said, oh, black people have a higher pain tolerance. No, motherfucker, they just didn't fucking say anything when you were when your ancestors were whipping them. Like, come on, like they couldn't say anything because it's either that or they fucking died. So it's like, you know, you had to build that mental toughness again. Trauma, motherfucker, generational trauma that has not been addressed. So like. That's where like everything comes into play there, and people don't seem to recognize that, and it goes back to this whole we have a bias for the present, and we do, because it's like the mentality, and if anything, it is a white supremacist ideology in a way. What can you do for me now? And it's like,
okay,
it's good. Okay, I understand it, but at the same time. It's like, what can you do for me now? It takes the focus away from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and you know, like I'm not even talking about the future because you know most
Or
people with ADHD.
We
that
don't
temporal
even. I
myopia.
think as a society, and people who are not ADHD or autistic, we don't care enough about the future. Like we only care about the present, and I think that's a big problem because a lot of things that we're doing that are damaging to the world, they're damaging to the other humans
Yeah.
that exist on this planet with us, and we don't think about the long term consequences of all the shit that we do. And I just mean
And
that
we
as
don't think
general
about
as human
the
beings.
historical precedent. We don't
Yeah.
think about the historical precedent at all. If we honestly thought about historical precedent, if we honest to God looked at historical precedent, right? There is things that would tell us like, oh, the things that we're doing are harmful. This has happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we still trying to do it? It's like a lot of people bringing up like with Kamala Harris right now. It's like, oh snap, like Hubert Humphrey, Vietnam War. Like, Hubert Humphrey lost that election to Richard Nixon. So like, and people have brought this up, and then other people are like, oh, why hasn't Kamala just come out and say they're anti-Israel, and this, that, and the third? Because the United States and Israel are so intrinsically linked that you cannot, like, you have to walk that line. You cannot outright be like, yo, fuck Israel. You cannot say that.
Right.
Even if you feel that, you can't, because like literally recent history, we saw 2 Democratic senators lose their primaries to people backed by AIPAC and stuff like that. We see what that stuff does, and we see what happens. And we see what happens when you outright come and be like, nah, fuck this, and the third. And because because there's this propaganda, and a lot, again, propaganda plays a role in almost everything.
Yeah.
You know, like, because the propaganda that like criticizing what the Israeli government does can be looked at as anti-Semitic, right? And like it's successfully infiltrated the cultural zeitgeist. People got to be super careful, and everybody's like getting on AOC for doing certain things. But it's like, you gotta play the game, and you have to play the game. It's the same thing. Again, the quirkification of like ADHD, autism, all that shit is propagandic behavior. It is a propaganda tool. It is a way to be like, yo, let's autism isn't as bad as it looks. ADHD is not as bad as it looks. We're gonna quirkify this stuff. And like the people, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not saying that there's like a central act that's as enabling this to be a thing. What I'm saying is that these people don't realize what these people.
I see it as a way for them to
realize.
try to get attention. Like I think that people do that. They're looking for a way to, because everybody wants to feel important. Everybody wants attention, and you get kind of a dopamine fix from all the attention you get, right? And I think that when people are doing that quirky stuff, I think a lot of that is just like they're looking for attention. I think.
So
they are, but like they don't realize the splash damage that happens. It's an AOE effect. Like for those who play video games, it's an AOE effect. The splash damage. There's every like area of effect. Everybody in that area is going to get damaged.
Yeah.
So and I get that there's other people that get affected by that, you know, even being on TikTok and whatnot. And not that I want to give any of these people any more credit than they don't deserve. But I do want to say it on this part, because the descriptions that you both gave about why they're doing what they're doing, maybe they're just trying to tell their version of the story. Maybe they're coming to terms with their own autism, and they're saying, no, I'm not broken. It's just this quirky thing about me, right? And on top of that, maybe they're new to being diagnosed, and they don't know that there are people who have autism who have far higher support needs. So they don't realize.
But that's the thing, right? But that's the thing. And that comes down to like the hyper individualism that is pervasive in America, you know, especially, and we're going to specifically talk about American society.
Oh, yeah.
And we can tell Canadian society as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the aggressive hyper individualism that comes into it, where it's just about me and nothing more. And it's like, you know, I've always, again, as a teacher, I'm very much, and people are my special interest too. So that's one big thing, like learning about people and things like that. Sometimes you got to come in there, like, don't kick the door, don't kick in the door waving the 4-4. And then like, and then all people hearing like, Papa, don't hit me no more. Shouts out to Biggie Smalls, rest in peace. But like, you know, come and open the door. You know, sometimes just sit down and observe. before you even start commenting. Like, that's the big thing. Like, come out. I consider myself fortunate to be able to to have been able to get a diagnosis of autism.
Mhm.
That's one, right? And two, being fortunate enough to be around neurodivergent people in my profession for as long as I've been doing it, and being able to learn about ADHD and autism and all that stuff ahead of time, and realize how it affects people in different ways. So I'm not coming on social media and talking out my ass. It's like I'm not shutting out higher support needs people. I'm not shutting out moderate support needs people. I'm like, listen, I'm talking about my autism and how it affects me. And I'm making absolutely damn sure that I'm specifying that.
Right.
Because I know, like, I know for example, there are people that I've worked with autism who are non-speaking. I've worked with one, and who was who had been considered profoundly autistic, like high, like level 3 high support needs. That motherfucker almost bit me.
Yeah.
Like, I almost bit me, but like he didn't bite me, he didn't kick me, he didn't any of that. But he's bitten people, he's kicked people and stuff like that back in the past. And like, I was fortunate enough to also be around a bunch of older autistic men and women. I had one little girl I used to work with, like her, like when she had a meltdown, she just take her freaking panties off and throw them across the room.
Yep.
And shit like that. I had to turn my head. I'm like, absolutely fuck not. There was another one there was one that gets aggressive. There was ones that get aggressive.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And it was like, when they get angry, when they get upset and whatnot, and they just need to be left alone and stuff like that. And I get that. But that was, the place I worked at did ABA and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
it was like, that's something, like the way they did it, I didn't like it. But like, at the same time, right? When it comes down to all of that, it's like, it's my autism. It's the way it affects me. It's not the way it affects somebody else. And then even then, I'm gonna uplift and highlight people who have greater support needs than me. It's not that I want the support and the services. I do. I just don't. And I'm not saying I feel bad if I'm engaging in those services, because I may need them. But I'm also recognizing that there are people out there that have definitely had it harder than me. I'm able to work. I'm able to have a conversation with you. Like, I'm hyperlexic. I'm hyperverbal. I'm an external processor. I'm having this conversation with you. I'm eloquent. I can be funny. I can be social, even though it's draining a lot. But I recognize that my life, like, I've made the things in my life happen. Even before I knew this was a thing, and I'm still going to continue to do it.
Right.
But a lot of people do not have that luxury. You got burnout. Like, some people experience burnout to such a degree. Y'all had a guest on here that talked, like, our very good mutual, our good friend Maj, talked about that, right? Talked about like their experience and things like that. They've talked about their experience like that with the autistic burnout and stuff like that. I've never gotten to that point. But I also feel like black people can't afford to get to that point, because like we're already behind the 8 ball in so many other different ways. But that's something else in itself. But like people have talked about that type of stuff. There's people that have like experienced skill regression. Like, I experienced some skill regression in my sociability. I struggle sometimes being around people. I never used to struggle being around. I used to be able to do it. I would just be very tired when I get home.
Right. You'd be pushing yourself. You'd be pushing yourself harder.
I didn't even know I was pushing myself.
No. It's not like a conscious thing, because I used to do it too. It's literally, you're just doing it because that's what you always did. And then you get to a point and realize, oh shit, I've been pushing myself so goddamn hard that I'm barely treading water regularly. And then when you have a moment where you're not treading water anymore, those brief, glimmers of moments where you're not, you kind of go, what was I doing to myself? Yeah. I mean, I've been doing that a lot lately. I'm also bipolar, and so that kind of adds into the equation for me, right? Yeah. When I was younger, I thought everybody else was just slower, right? And like, let's talk about ADHD and bipolar when you're manic at the exact same time. I thought everybody was slower. I thought everybody was dumber. I thought everybody, couldn't quite think as quickly, couldn't quite figure out stuff as much. No,
Right.
it's
I
because I
think
was
that's dope.
grandiose of being bipolar and my head was going crazy because of ADHD unchecked, right? Like it was all this convergence of things. And in that, like, kind of the same thing. I didn't realize how abusive I was to myself in those moments.
Yeah.
Same thing
It's
with
the
my
same thing. I
depression.
feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you in that because
Yeah.
it's like I still feel sometimes like, why can't y'all figure this out? I figured this out already.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not like super grandiose about it. I'm just like I just get irritated to myself. It's like, why
Yeah.
can't like, and then like, but I'm more along the lines of like, I realize that there's a lot of things that I cannot do
Right.
as quickly as other people. Like, for example, I'll tell you straight up, I tell this story all the time. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I didn't learn to tie my shoes properly until I was 10 years old.
All right.
Like,
Everybody
I'm
in
still
their own
very
time,
clumsy.
though.
Huh?
Everybody learns in their own time. Everybody comes around in
but
their own
think
time.
about it. Think about it developmentally, though.
Oh,
Think
yeah.
about it from
No. I get
from a
what you're
developmental
saying, though.
standpoint. You're supposed to be able to tie your shoes at like 5.
Yeah.
5, 6 years old.
Right.
Right. That you're supposed to have like the hand-eye coordination to do that.
Right.
Like for me, I'm like I'm still very clumsy. I still bump into things and everything like that. Like
Sure.
I think I have dyspraxia.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Everybody like hell, even my girlfriend is like, yeah, you should never work in a restaurant. And I'm like, yeah. Like even like I drop things cooking sometimes. I have to be super conscious and super careful what
Right.
I'm doing. But I have to take my time and do especially when things are delicate.
Yeah.
I take time. Like you should see me trying to open like a bottle sometimes. Like sometimes I got to do like this to open a bottle. Like to hold it.
Do you drink water like Trump with 2 hands? And
Like I can do it. I can do it like
Yeah.
I get the bottle open. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like sometimes I got to hold the bottle close to my body to make sure it doesn't drop out of my hands.
Yeah.
Because this times I spill the drink, just opening the bottle and my hands just say, "Oh no, fuck you, we're not gonna listen." Like,
Right. And
come on, yo, real.
And I would say in that regard, like, I don't know how close this is to topic or not, but I'm gonna fucking probably stray us a little bit. So, like, when it comes to some of the things that you talked about, dyspraxia, I talked about bipolar, we're talking about autism, ADHD. It actually bothers me when people don't want to talk about, like, quote unquote, a severity level, because it does affect people differently. And like,
Oh yeah,
I would by no means classify my bipolar as severely debilitating to me, but there are people who it is, right? And I think we have to have an understanding of that, right? Because
right.
I'll also say, like, even when it comes to racial identities too, right? If you grew up in a family with money, right, regardless of what your race is, if you grew up in a family with money, your experience is very, very, very different from somebody's experience who did not have money.
Yes.
Right. And all the way down the line, if you grew up in a middle class family, regardless of it, your experience is very different than somebody lower, right? Or
a single parent
household. Exactly. Because even if they had money, but it's a single parent household, or if you had 5 siblings opposed to 1 sibling,
it was
like all those things affect it. But when I was talking about the severity there, like, I think that's part of a conversation that people want to wipe away, because there is a mild form of X, insert whatever you want, right? And when I say mild, it doesn't mean it don't affect somebody.
It's spectrum, man.
Right. Well, but some people don't like using that language. They're just like, oh, autism is autism.
Shut the
No,
fuck up.
I work with
real
folks
shit.
who are severely autistic. And I know some people don't like using the word severely, but they are severely autistic. They're in a group home 24/7. They have a hard time expressing themselves without punching, kicking, biting. And so
I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you. Sorry to cut you off on
No, you're
that
good.
one. I'm gonna say it again.
Mhm.
Those people who do not believe that we should be talking about the level of support needs or the severity of support needs, that they need to shut the fuck up.
Right.
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is, and you know what? Like, here's the thing. You want to oppress people?
Mhm.
Like, the oppressed always become the fucking oppressor.
Always.
My girlfriend says that to me a lot. And it's true. The oppressed always becomes the oppressor. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, those who feel oppressed will always try to oppress other people, because it's like, oh, now I'm in this position. Now I can hold other people down. Yeah,
Right.
now I can hold other people down. But like we're not realizing that, like, yo, by holding them down, you're holding yourself down, you clown.
Yeah.
Like the Russian Revolution.
Yeah, well, but that's how you secure your power, is identifying who's below you. That's how you keep yourself feeling like you're powerful, is by identifying who's lesser to you.
Real power.
Look, that's
real power
Yeah.
is owning your shit.
Yes.
And also being able to fucking help people. And
Yes.
that's the thing. That's the main reason I started doing my lives on TikTok. I want to help people.
Mm.
Like, I want to be able to help autistic parents. I want to be able to help moderate support needs. I want to help low support needs. I want to help people that don't understand what autism and ADHD are to understand what this shit is.
Right.
I want autistic people of color. I want people of color who come in and think they're autistic to fucking have a place where they can relate.
Yep.
I want hell, even if you're white, I don't care what you are.
Right.
If you can relate to some of the things that I'm talking about or some of the things that I'm sharing, like that's what matters the fucking most.
Absolutely.
Like the thing about it is like, yo, again, I worked in the New York City Department of Education as a substitute paraprofessional. I've worked with level 3 support needs, autistic people. I've worked with very like people whose IEPs were had severe had things that they couldn't take care of themselves and shit like that. Like I had to fucking change a kid in a feeding tube and shit like that. Poop green is fucking goose shit.
Right.
Like
they had ADL issues.
Smell is one thing that it fucks me up.
Yeah.
So like that's a sensory thing for me. I can't stand the smell of poop. So it's like I can't smell that. I can't stand that shit. I can't stand bodily fluids, bodily secrete, none of that shit.
Right.
Right. But I'd had to fucking do it.
Right.
And even with that, it's like, yo, having the fact that people have the audacity, the fucking audacity, and for some people it's the caucasity to fucking sit there and be like, oh, these people don't fucking matter. It's all about me. It's all about my thing. My thing, like I need more people to understand what my thing is. It's like, yes, you're talking about your autistic traits, the things that make you autistic, the things that you deal with on a severe level. But then here's the thing: what about those that can't communicate for themselves?
Right.
Or what about people that need advocates to communicate? Are you listening to them? What about our complex communicators, the ones that use like AAC support, or the ones who can only write? Or the ones who need to like transcribe, like the ones that need to transcribe their thoughts. Those people who like don't have the privilege of masking. Those people that don't have the privilege of being able to communicate in a secure fashion.
Absolutely.
Those people that's not like me or you who can't like literally eloquently express themselves. That's the thing that bugs me, and that's the thing that gets me fucked up, all the way fucked up. Right?
So
because it's like,
thank you for calling me eloquent. Thank you for calling me eloquent. I just want to throw it out there before we go too far.
He's never been accused of that before.
Yeah, I've never been accused of that yet. Anyway, and the other thing is,
we can talk.
Yeah, caucasity, by the way, is the greatest word ever. Caucasity. I saw it. I heard you say it, or I saw one of your videos or your live, and you said it, and I immediately went, I need to define that in my own head so I can start using that all the fucking time. And I did. I got to use it in a conversation. I got to use it in a conversation the other day, and like the person goes, caucasity, and I was like, yeah, you'll get it when you get it. Yeah, but I knew exactly what you were talking about. I knew. Like,
I see examples of that whenever I go out in public, especially like at the grocery store.
Of course.
I hate shopping at the grocery store sometimes because people just have this weird sense of privilege, and it's just like,
of course.
Like especially them Karens, it's like, yo, I'm not the caucasity right now. Shut the fuck up and get out of my way. Like, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I will actually say, like, depending on what environment you're in, like, depending on what. Let me break it down very specifically. Depending on what business you walk into, depending on whatnot, there can be all different colors and types of Karens. Like, depending on where you, because there can be that heightened sense of entitlement, power, depending on the environment you're sitting in. And that can look very, very different, but yet so similar.
It's all the same base. It's all like entitlement and shit.
Yeah.
And that's why I fear, that's why I get really scared for. This is where I get really scared for, and it's not just TikTok, it's social media in general.
Yep.
I get scared for the autism and ADHD community because it's starting to get to a point, and I'm not saying things are overdiagnosed. I will never say that. We just know more about autism and ADHD. Yes. Yeah, ADHD may be overdiagnosed because, you know, the pandemic kind of enabled that with like done and all that other shit, which Thank fucking God they're getting their shit kicked in by the Department of Justice. But like, as we start to learn more about how autism presents in women and people of color and queer people and so forth and so on, we're going to start to see a lot lower support in these autistic people coming in and taking up the space.
Yeah.
And they're going to just talk about their experience.
Right.
And they're just going to be like, all right, look, that's just what I experienced. And that's what it's going to get associated with. And then the parents and those that are like moderate or higher support needs, the complex communicators, so on and so forth, get drowned out. I get really nervous for that, because then that will just enable their needs to get ignored more in other spaces. Like, it's already terrible in schools where they're looking for a specific type of autism, apparently. Like, it's called educational autism. It's like, there's no fucking such thing as educational autism, you mental midgets.
Yeah,
like,
what would that mean? Like, what exactly would that mean?
Nigga?
Like, what does educational autism mean?
What you were just talking about, too, reminded me of the kind of the opposite of that. And I was watching a video on YouTube, and it was Abby from Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
Her mom was basically, there were people, a bunch of autistic people on a panel.
Journey. Oh, you talking about fucking, what is it called? Jubilee?
Yeah, the Jubilee video.
Oh,
and she was, Abby's mom was basically kind of like gatekeeping autism, saying like, oh, well, you're not really autistic. That was kind of her vibe. She was giving off was like, she was like, Abby, because basically what Abby's mom was like, and this is kind of the reverse of what you were just saying, is like kind of like there's the opposite side. Well, she as a parent dealt with certain things, so unless you've had to deal with the same things that she had with Abby, then your kid is, or it's not the same. You know, like it's like, oh, that's not autism, that's something else.
Right.
It's neurodifference or something. She called it.
I will say this, that people all want to feel like they belong to a community. At the same time, they love to decide for themselves what it means to be that community. And like, all of us are social beings. Like, all human beings are, from base premise, they want to belong, right?
Yeah.
And in that regard, everybody gets super finite of what they belong to and how they belong to it. And then they get real bitchy when somebody show up to that community, that group that only kind of fits. And I'll say from personal experience that when other people label me with a bunch of stuff, regardless of what I identify as, but they identify me as something, I don't fit that group. And I can say outright that any group somebody can identify me as, or even stuff I identify myself as, I've never fit into that group well enough to be accepted. And so for me, I immediately assume when I come across people and they're like, oh yeah, we're similar in this trait, I immediately say to myself, yeah, no, we're not, because at the end of the day, you're not going to accept me anyway, which is partially why I don't give a shit how I talk to people. To a degree. I mean, you can attest, there are times where I'm nice to people, but I've always had to kind of assume that, because like I present as cis white male, and pretty normal, I guess. But most of that doesn't really apply to me, because yes, I'm male because it's how I was born. And the white thing, I started to question that recently, although I don't know if I'm allowed to, but when it comes to like, cause I'm also bisexual, but I'm also autistic and I'm bipolar, but none of those groups really accept me because I'm not enough of it. Right. And then like to get into smaller degree stuff, like when it comes to theater people don't, accept me, even though I'm there doing the show with them, but because I don't act the way they think I should. So it's that social expectation. I mean, it's their, microcosm of a social group, but I don't fit in anywhere in that regard.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons why me and Steve connected to begin with in the first improv group we were doing, is because neither one of us really fit in with those other people, because we had this similarity amongst us. But there's things me and Steve have had to accommodate for one another too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because his autism a little different than my autism. His certain things about him are a little different than me, and we had to do so. And I don't want to take it on a general of like everybody has to do that for everybody.
I get what you're saying,
yeah, there's like specific things, but it's the acceptance in those communities. So I think when it comes to getting back to what you said that actually spurred me to say all of this, Abby's mom, I think that's kind of what she's doing, because she did deal with her daughter being a higher support need than some of the other folks on that panel, than some of the other folks. Now, I have 3 autistic children. Okay. I have 4
Right.
children total, but I got 3 autistic children of varying support needs. Okay.
Yes.
Two are on the lower support end, if you will, and one is
Yeah.
medium support,
Okay.
if not high support. And I only say that because there are some things that she is more than able to do for herself, but there's also somebody got to be there all the time. You know what I mean? Like, just the fact her dancing all the time, she might bump into some jazz. So sometimes you got to dance with her just to make sure she's not bumping into something and hurting herself, right? But when it comes to that, like when people hear that 2 of my children and me are on the spectrum, they're like, oh, well, that must be very different. In some ways it is, but in some ways it's the exact same as Becky. Yeah, I'm going to actually use her name because Natalie said I could.
You already have before.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I tried to not use her name, but anyway, but there are things Becky does that I completely identify that, yep, we both autistic, right?
Yeah.
And like, where the fuck was my point? Oh, right. The similarities thing, right? Like all the other intersectionalities that we all have, autism is like the one thing that we can all say we're a community together for. And we have to
Right.
include all of those differences you talked about in autism. We have to
Exactly.
include it, because if we're not a community as a whole and we keep identifying all these differences about us, then we're not really a community as a whole. And by no means are we going to get the recognition, representation, and or support that we truly need.
Right about that shit.
Right?
And
Beca-
and that's the thing people have to come to terms with too. They
Yeah.
gotta come to like, and I'll say this, and I'll say this. I say y'all two, both of y'all have like are really aware of that shit. I mean, y'all are doing really awesome with this. But then there's other people that are like, you know, that they may not recognize that they are participating in like white exceptionalism.
Yeah.
When it comes to like, and even exceptionalism in general. Like, but like
In general,
like,
yeah.
the more egregious is the white exceptionalism, right?
Yes.
Whereas like we don't want like, oh, we had this and now they're like a bunch of black and queer and Latino and whatever are trying to identify
It's
with
such
it.
a weird
We
way
gotta
to look
continue to move the
things,
goalposts
like-
for ourselves. We don't
Yes.
want to be associated with them.
Yeah.
It's such a weird way to look at things. Like from my perspective, that's always confused me when people who react that way to like different people coming into quote unquote their space or you know what I mean? Like I don't get it. Like I just don't see how people can think that way.
Well, but I will say,
Social
like,
conditioning, man.
yeah,
Societal conditioning.
absolutely.
But I've never, because
people
I
are
don't
very
like
protective of their territory.
I've never really gave a crap about, like, I don't know, maybe, and that's I guess that's a privileged thing on my part, but I've never really like to me, I've never like when growing up, most of my friends were quote unquote different in some way. You know, I
Sure.
grew up in when I went to school, it was all like white kids. We had very few non-white kids, and we had very few people who were openly gay or queer, etc. But most of my friends were all of those people. Like I was friends with, but I just never, because I didn't like, to me, I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like I just like, I'll just like look at people as people, and I know that's I've had to.
I did as a kid too. It really wasn't until like, you know, everything was going on with like Michael Brown and all that stuff, and Black Lives Matter and everything like that, that I really started becoming more hyper aware of it, because it's like, wow, I didn't realize how different the experience was, because I was of the same ilk. I was like, look, you know, like, oh, you know, like we're all people, like there's no big difference. And then when I really started to see it as I was getting older, I was like, oh shit.
No,
There is a difference.
there is,
What the
but
fuck?
it's the how do people think? Like it's what you're saying is true, but it's the people who are reacting the way that you were saying, or like they're
It's usually people.
it's
That don't
like,
have
why do
exposure
you
to those people?
Right. It's how other people, like, our differences only become our differences when other people are reacting to us. Because the three of us in this conversation, we're just 3 human beings talking.
Daryl
right?
Davis, man.
But when somebody watches our podcast who doesn't identify with any one of the 3 of us, now they're going to like say some negative shit. Maybe they're going to put down the podcast. Now they're going to say, it's like, you guys are all wrong.
There was a live on TikTok one time, and somebody brought up, it was a bunch of women and they were
Yeah.
autistic, and they were talking, and our podcast came up, and none of them had ever actually seen any of our stuff, but they said we were misogynist,
Oh,
probably just
right.
because there's two guys. So I
Right.
was like, all right.
But at the same time, like what they don't recognize, and that's like isolation. That's like self-isolation right there.
Yeah.
What they don't recognize is like TikTok is mostly white women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about autism,
Oh my
social
God.
media, and things like that. So like the thing about it is y'all have that that space work for y'all. Now that other people want to get in that space, it's like y'all sitting on there like not like later diagnosed men are trying to get in the space, or like black people are trying to get in the space, or queer people are trying to get in the space. Y'all starting to have y'all feelings about it, and then it's like, okay, cool, have your feelings about it, but
is it like a defensive
so that you won't
thing?
get called out.
I think maybe
yeah.
it's like it's like a defensive thing. It's like, well,
It
so something is foreign coming into my
Right.
environment,
And
and now
that's-
it's like, well, what separates me from this other thing?
Well, that's exactly
But
what it
there's
is.
no real separation though.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
know
The
that
only
that's how the
separation-
person
only
feels.
separation is how you experience.
They
it.
start
That's
looking,
right.
but I'm saying they
That's
start
right.
looking for differences because
Yeah, they identify surface level.
You're trying to,
jazz
like,
just
pick
to
out-
other somebody.
oh well, this is these are men talking about autism now in our space where we're talking about autism. Well, let's fixate on something about them that's different from our experience. So, no.
I will say until I went to get my bachelor's degree in my late 30s, mid to late 30s, I didn't realize, because I used to make fun of it all the time, safe spaces, right? Having a space that you call your own. I used to make fun of it a lot because, well, I was that guy. I make fun of everything. Like,
Hey, you gotta be able to look back at yourself, right?
right. Like I'll make fun of everything about me and everything else. But anyway, when I went to college, I didn't realize how important that truly was. Exactly. That was my reaction because like at that point, I wasn't out about being bisexual, but I was still hanging out with people who were part of the LGBT community, right? And when somebody said, we're going to start our meeting, but it's for people of our community, looking at me, I kind of went, where the fuck can I stay? I won't say a goddamn word. I just want to fucking learn from your perspective of things. And they were like, no, not this time around. We're going to talk, our community stuff. And I felt so pushed away and ostracized. But then that moment made me start to contemplate the shit out of every time anyone who is other than that group in that room gets pushed out. But in the same point, I realized that I'm pushing in on their space. I'm pushing in on where I should not be. And I'm not saying everybody should be, segregated their little, cubbyhole space, but we all need that too. We all need a place.
So let's take a look at autism, right? Let's take a look in the space of autism, ADHD, right?
Yeah.
It's such a big fucking space. But it's such a big fucking space. But and everybody has their own little alcoves. They can be in their own little classrooms they can be in. And when they need to be. But like then there's like the common area that everybody can exist in peacefully like that.
Yeah.
But like peacefully. And then you can still go and visit the other classes from time to time. Like there's nothing wrong with you auditing a course. If you really want to understand, like, okay, if you're a white woman and you really want to understand what a black man has to do with autism and like how how autism affects them and how their experience as a black man, affects the way they experience their autism. Like, I mean, it's a mini show, but like it's an example. The first one that can come out of my head.
Yeah.
Come see me in my life. Okay, talk to me about this stuff.
Right.
Really sit there and come in, be a student, because we're all students of the game.
Yeah.
We never stop learning. And the minute you think you can stop learning, like you're cooked, you're done. Like, because the minute you stop learning is the minute that everybody leaves you behind. So like, if you are like, if you're white and you really want to understand, if you're a white autistic person and you really want to understand how it affects a black autistic person, visit my life, find or get in the community with like a queer autistic person if you are straight and cisgender. Talk to people and really just like visit the classroom, audit the classes.
I would say, like, unfortunately, because TikTok and social media is what it is, there is a level of editing that a person has to do about how they perceive certain things. But I think go seek out a place where you can learn that experience, right? Like for myself, one of our other friends, Ian, loves to bring me to places that are more like him. He's a Jamaican American gentleman. He's a black guy, and he loves to bring me to black spaces. and loves to, because he loves to see the reaction of other people.
Yeah,
More so than me. Like, I don't walk in the door going, what am I doing? I just walk up to the bar, get a beer, but he watches everybody else's reaction to this white dude walking into a place, right? And he loves that shit.
I know that. I know
loves
that
that
exact
shit.
feeling. Because
Okay.
my girlfriend, we go to a soul food spot.
Yep.
And my girlfriend is this
And my
6'1", like 380,
Mhm.
400 pound woman,
Mhm.
white woman, walking into a black restaurant in middle Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn with my skinny black ass. All the eyes right on her.
Right?
And it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
It's like me walking into a white space and it's like, but like the black people ain't gonna really comment like that. Unless like they're not always gonna comment like that.
It depends on which place you're at.
Situation.
Because first time we went to a Cape Verdean bar in New Bedford, walked in the door, first words out of somebody's mouth when I sat down, "Are you lost?" And I immediately thought about like super racist movies from like the 60s and the 70s.
Like, white boy, you lost?
What? Yeah.
Like, white boy, you lost?
Yeah. Like, person was just like, you lost? You couldn't find a sports bar? And I was like, beer's beer. That's all there is to it. Beer's beer. It doesn't matter any of the rest of it. And the person was like, go find your own place. And then the guy behind the bar, who I happen to know, goes, no, he's good here.
I sometimes wonder.
And the guy walked to another spot. But Ian is laughing his ass off the whole time, by the way.
I really
have bad experiences, and I get it.
Right. No,
I really,
and it's not every time, and it's not every place. And of course, me and Ian have had that conversation of him being like, now you get it. Now you understand what it's like for me sometimes to go into some of these places. And he's like, you got something pretty blatant in front of you. I get these real small, subtle little clues that I'm not wanted. And I was like, no, tell me more about those. Tell me more about what those small things look like.
I can give you an example for me.
Yeah.
It's whenever I go around white women and they start clutching their purse.
Oh, the immediate
me.
grab hold of it. Yeah, that immediate.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, if I was going to rob you, I would have robbed you already.
Yeah. It would have already happened and been done.
I'm not even, listen, my ADHD ass is not even fucking paying attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm busy taking care of myself. I'm in my own fucking world. Sorry. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they get so timid and stuff like that. They get start looking around and stuff like that. Like, if honestly, like, I'm gonna be real with you. Like, lady, you scare me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you scare me more than I'm scared of you. You scare me. I'm scared of you more than you're scared of me.
Well, because the outcome for you is far more severe than the outcome for her.
Exactly.
Right.
So, like that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So like, that's why I'm super welcoming. Like, sure. Like, like we get, here's the thing, like there's people in the community that like I used to be in community with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the way they did things. And, I don't necessarily agree. I'm like, like granted, like I granted for me, like if my, like if my content, if my lives and stuff like that have like more white people in the conversation, is because of like generally it's because of the proximity. But I'm still trying to focus my content on people of color, queer people, and so on, the marginalized, right?
Right.
Like I just understand that, but like just understand like I'm making an effort to do it. Like I'm making an effort to do it. If you're not making an effort to do it, if you're not making an effort, if you're not genuinely making an effort to do it, or if your trauma is too, if your trauma is too strong and you haven't dealt with that, where you're still being like exclusionary in a sense in your own regard and not addressing some of the things that, you should have addressed before even addressing like the autism or the ADHD and things like that. It's like we recognize like there's certain people of color that have proximity to whiteness.
Yep.
We know this. Like we could say Asian people have very good proximity to white just because of like what happened. And I say it like this: 100 years ago, the United States, 100 plus years ago, the United States didn't even want Chinese people.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. Hell, Italian and Irish motherfuckers weren't even considered white.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And then Irish people ended up being Irish Americans ended up being some of the most racist motherfuckers on the planet.
which is very
Like,
funny.
how did that work?
I mean, well, ironic anyway.
Well, I mean, because they were
right?
because they were shit on, and then they went and shit on somebody else, like we were talking before.
Yeah, it's
the
really
oppressed
funny to
become
me.
the oppressor.
It's really funny to me when you hear like, because a lot, especially like the South, where there's a lot of people who immigrated from Ireland, Scotland to like the southern parts of the U.S. So and a lot of the poorer people, rural people, like the moonshiners and stuff, were all like Irish and Scottish immigrants and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really funny to hear them talk about the purity of the white blood when it's like they weren't even considered white.
Yeah, I'm like, listen, living in New York City, if you've ever heard the story of Seneca Village and how Central Park was built, and like Seneca Village was really just like Black, Italian, and Irish people, right? All living in community because they couldn't live anywhere else in New York, right? And then the city just full on eminent domain, that whole area. I don't remember exactly where Seneca Village started, but I know it was in like the southern part of Central Park. And like there was like a chunk of that space, and they just basically kicked all of them out. Eminent domain, all the Black, Irish, and Italian people.
Oh my God.
Right? All those immigrants. Yeah, man. All of them. Everybody. Eminent domain. Now you got that big ass Central Park in the middle of Manhattan.
Wow.
And stuff like that. Right? So like it's funny, and I love how the younger generation of Irish and Italian Americans are recognizing, hey, yo, our ancestors were fucking racist. Shit. When we weren't even, and they're recognizing their history, which is great. You know, it's kind of like that's the thing that kind of trips me up a lot of the time, where it's like, you know, how do you not know your history, or how do you not know you know, your proximity to this, like your proximity to this, because like, I'm going to be real with you. Like I'm going to be, and I know like, I don't know who pays attention to your podcast, who follows you, and whatever the case may be, you know, like I don't pay attention to that stuff because that's not my business. But like, I know there's going to be people that listen to the podcast and hear what I have to say. And they're going to be like, oh my God, like Clinton's a terrible person. And I'm like, look, I'm just keeping it real with you.
Yeah.
Like I'm keeping it real with you. Like, here's the thing. Like, if you're going to be a person of color, and you're still going to use your proximity to whiteness to color that lens of how you view that shit, where you're going to infantilize and you're going to treat black and brown people lesser than you, or you're just going to be like, oh, they're so helpless and this, that, and the third, or you're going to say dumb shit, and then when people hold you accountable, you're going to be like, you're going to sit down there and use your freaking tears and weaponize your tears to kind of like gain sympathy, when you know you're the fucked up individual in that situation. You need to take a good look in the mirror, take a second, get off this social media app, and actually fucking investigate. What are you doing this for?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
You can't
Take
call yourself
accountability.
a fucking advocate.
Yeah.
You can't call yourself a fucking advocate if you are actively being aggressively stupid.
I wouldn't say I'm aggressively stupid. Just stupid.
No. Yeah, just stupid.
Just regular
not
stupid.
aggressively. Yeah.
Just regular stupid.
I will say that, like, sometimes, man, I got like 5 things to jump off of.
All right.
I appreciate your conversations because, like, oh my God, it's packed so wonderfully and densely, but I got so much I want to jump off of.
There was something I wanted to say for a while, but there was a few points in the conversation where something came up. We were talking about, like, you know, people's differences and similarities and all that stuff. But when you were talking about before about how a lot of like poor white people and poor black people started to realize, hey, we have a lot more in common than what separates us or makes us different.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing more of that like in the culture as well. I think you're seeing like a lot of cultural crossover between like some of the quote unquote like redneck culture with like, I don't know, black culture. Like you're seeing a lot of crossover stuff.
Country music ain't shit. Country music is black music too.
Yes, it is.
Country music is redneck rap. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the same shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same shit. You know what I mean? Instead of sucking a buck, you made like my president is black, my Lambo is blue, and then saying my girlfriend fucked me in the back of my Ford. I don't want to fucking see her no more. Like, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
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 You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
See, I think more people need to focus on the similarities. We need to acknowledge the differences, acknowledge the impact that they have, but we need to also focus on some similarities here because I think people would get along a hell of a lot better and not just get along, but recognize who we are more if we focused on those similarities better.
Do you know?
hell yeah.
Do you know?
Because the thing is, all right, so we know, so like, and then this kind of ties in trust and belief. So we know, right, that like autistic people and ADHD people are very good mimics, right? We can, accents are very things that we do, right? Like, hell, I just did a freaking red, okay?
Right.
Like a redneck twang, right? Like, I remember a conversation, I think earlier this year, about autistic people like speaking AAVE and them not realizing how problematic that shit is. And
AAVE.
African American vernacular English.
Oh, all right.
Like black slang.
Yeah,
like
no. I got you now.
Yeah, right. So like you see these like and a lot of it catered, a lot of it was really directed to the white queer autistic. Autistics, right? That would just pick up this black slang and speak it. And I'm like, part of it, is accents is a thing. That like accent mimicking things like that. And also like when I'm talking about certain people, I tend to like speak in exactly how they speak to quote them. I get that. Right. But a lot of it was like people making it their personality. And it's like, you did not grow up with this shit. Like, that's like me going out in the world. I'm like, oh my God, I know. I'm like going to talk like a valley girl. Or me going like, yeah, bro, what's up, bro? Yeah. I'm from fucking Brooklyn, New York, nigga.
Right.
I'm not speaking like that. I don't live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Like, are you dead ass with that shit? Like you tweaking with that? Absolutely not.
I think on the flip side of that, people do, like, when you spend a lot of time around people, you tend to start mimicking each other without even realizing it. But I see what you're saying. Like, if you take it to an extreme, or if you're like,
there's a point in which you're not appreciating, you're just stealing to be relatable. Yeah, there you go. Like, I can understand somebody who grew up with somebody from anywhere else who speaks slightly different and grew up with them, and so you adopt some of the syntax and wording. Cool. But if you walk in first day into a new space, regardless of who you are in your background, and immediately try to mimic what they're doing, you might want to question that a little bit.
It's like the Steve Buscemi meme where he's got the skateboard, like, hello, fellow kids.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
and exactly. Respect politics too, because that's the thing too. Like, that also ties into respectability politics, where like respectability politics helps no one. Well, that's the first.
What's respectability politics?
Huh?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, respectability politics essentially is like, all right, like you know how black people got a code switch and they got to speak in a very specific way in certain situations.
Oh yeah,
just so they're not looked at as like aggressive or looked at as ignorant or unintelligent,
right?
Things like that. Whereas like it's kind of like appealing to what the standard is, and the standard is typically a white male centric standard of like professionalism and all that shit.
Let's also go with affluent. Throw that word affluent in there too.
Affluent,
yeah, because like rich white men by itself isn't necessarily high enough. We got to add the rich on top of that.
Yeah, the affluent, right?
Yeah,
so the
affluent to it. Yeah,
right. The affluent type of thing where you're expected to dress in a very like if you're a woman, black woman or whatever, you're supposed to dress in a very conservative, respectable way. Like, this is the reason why we have the Crown Act, like to protect black people's hairstyles from being criminalized and stuff and discriminated against. Like, there's those respectability politics. Like, as an educator, a lot of like I've gotten a lot of times like, oh, you can't talk slang to these kids and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, hold on. You want me to respect the culture of the kids that we're serving, but you're not going to respect mine? Like, absolutely the fuck not.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing this respectability politics. And the thing with autism, it's the same fucking thing.
Oh, yeah.
Being black, being queer, being trans, being Asian, Japanese, Chinese, fucking Russian, being white, being from New England, it's all fucking different. Being from like the mid-Atlantic states, being from the South, being from the Midwest, being from the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, being from fucking Cali, like all that shit comes into play. And like you want people to adhere to this one fucking standard that is so goddamn narrow, and it doesn't promote authenticity. Like, imagine how stressful that is. Like, masking is already stressful for people who are late diagnosed, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's add code switching to that shit. And understand how like Black and brown people, Black and Latino people, Black and Latina people, right? Understand like the fact that they have to not only code switch what they do on a constant basis, they have to mask the things that will be deemed like inappropriate,
right,
for the environment that they're in. It don't.
Well, I want to mention that standard that you're talking about, that affluent, white, straight, male, that line of stuff, nobody actually fits into that social standard. Like most of them don't even fit into it. And like, that's the thing that amazes me is when people talk about appropriate behavior in public, they're like, oh, you can't say this in public. That's not professional, this or that. But nobody can explain what the fuck that shit is. But everybody seems to have this standard, but they themselves don't even necessarily fit into.
Like, how the fuck does me speaking, how the fuck does me being like, "You're was good" affect the way that I teach my fucking class?
Yeah, it doesn't.
How does a Black woman coming in with like a fucking extensions affect the way that they do their fucking job?
It doesn't at all.
Unless the extensions are getting tangled in the product and pulling that shit down.
I think if anything, wouldn't it make people trust you more if you were, because you'd come across as more genuine if you're being yourself rather than like faking or pretending?
I would actually say that there is a weird societal standard of the closer you get to that, the better you are somehow, right? Like the closer you can hit that ideal, because nobody hits it, but the closer you get to it, no matter who you are, where you came from, the closer you get there, we're going to deem you as better somehow in society. Like, most people agree that I should not say fuck around a 6-year-old. But what does the word fuck mean? Yeah. Like, okay, good. Okay, you agree with me. Like, because the word fuck doesn't mean anything. It means nothing, really. But we put this emphasis on it as this naughty, bad thing. And somehow we're going to corrupt a kid because the kid says fuck? How about
Here's the problem. They're going to fucking hear that shit around them anyway.
Yes.
Right? So like my thing is like this. I have kids that I had 3-year-old students of mine that said heck and hell and shit like that.
Right.
And I'm like, yo, I don't mind you saying that. Like, but other people don't like it.
Right.
So please try to remember not to say that. And he did a really good job. Sometimes he'll still say, what the heck or what the hell? And I'm like, hey,
yeah,
that ain't it.
Yeah.
Like, and I would just give him like that. I'm like, oh, my bad. And he'll remember that. And I'm like, yeah. And it's like, you know, like you, like there are people, I saw this parent, this family on TikTok 2 years ago. I remember this specifically. It's like, oh, I teach, like we curse in front of our kids, but we tell the kids, like, there is a time and a place. We explain that, like, sometimes people use bad words, and we make fun of it, but like the whole, hey, mommy, can I say a bad word? Can I say a bad word? And like, I'm like, you know, getting permission to express yourself in that way, in a healthy, authentic way, is like, you know, we suppress. Like the thing is, we suppress, like as a society, we suppress expressing ourselves.
Oh,
like as the three of us as men, we are conditioned not to express ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
We are conditioned only to be angry. Like as a society, we are conditioned.
I talked about that in one of the other episodes. Is that like the reason why like men are often seen as aggressive, or why we are more aggressive a lot of times compared to women or other people, is because that's the only emotion that we're taught to express. So everything is varying degrees of aggression and anger rather than like expressing happiness.
Yeah.
Like instead of saying, "Oh my God, I'm so happy," it's like "Fuck yeah!" Like everything's so aggressive and
and I talk about often.
And the thing is, you're not allowed to cry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're not allowed to cry.
It's even my point was even positive emotions are expressed in an aggressive way.
So I actually was crying in one of our episodes. I used to always describe myself as being overly emotional. But no, nowadays it's not overly emotional. No, I'm emotional because I'm a human being. I'm not overly nothing. If you think this is an inappropriate time to cry, then you don't cry, but I'm gonna. Because this is when my body says it's the right time to do so, right?
Yeah.
And
I found ways not to cry if I feel like I want to cry. Like I'm gonna just like try to name how I'm feeling.
Yeah,
and like if I try to name how I'm feeling, and if I can't do it, then I'll cry because that's the only thing that can help. Then
right.
It's just I've always, when I was a kid, when I was younger, and even still as an adult, I'm like, if I feel like crying and getting angry, I'm gonna cry and get angry and stuff like that. I just know better coping mechanisms, healthier coping mechanisms than to just straight break down crying and stuff like that. But I also recognize that there's a science. Like, again, it goes to like intersectionality. There is also societal expectations to that shit.
Yeah.
So like, as a black man, like you shouldn't cry. That's weakness. You're being weak. You're a pussy.
Yeah,
like,
somehow it's weak.
And some people might even react negatively to you if they saw you crying. They might be like, "Oh, something wrong with him. He's weird."
Right. Like,
yeah, exactly. So
how is it weak
why you
to
always
cry?
crying?
Yeah, but why is it
like,
weak
cry
to
like
cry?
Girl, like only girls cry. I'm like, fuck out of here.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, isn't it stronger to recognize and be able to manage your emotions than to deny them? Like, it's stronger to allow yourself to feel. It's so much harder to allow yourself to feel.
This is a horrible example because it's a dumb show, but have you ever seen, they do that show like What Would You Do?
Yeah.
They did one where like they had this.
Oh, you talking about like the 2020 shit? Yeah.
Yeah, they had one where like they had this they had this woman crying like in a store. And people kept asking her what was wrong, tried to comfort her, but then they reversed it and they had a guy and he was like crying about, I don't know if it was like he just got dumped or if it was somebody just died or something like that. But he was crying about something in public and everybody treated him like he was weird or something was wrong with him. But then when they swapped the sexes and they had a woman, everybody was like compassionate and showed empathy for her. Yeah. But it's just kind of like the
fucking thing.
It happens all the time.
Everybody's like, "Oh, there's something wrong with that guy. Like, stay away from him."
And the thing about it is, right? Like, and I say this all the time. I'm like, like we can sit down, we're blaming the fathers and this and that. I'm like, no, sometimes like we have to blame both parents. We have to blame the mothers.
Oh yeah,
because the mothers the mothers of our children have a very strong responsibility in this for trying to uphold the systems of patriarchy that actually create this situation where men cannot be vulnerable, where men end up being fucking entitled to like the company of a woman or entitled to sex or entitled to intimacy and stuff like that. And then the thing about, but you can't blame the mother. And I'm like, yes, you can.
I used to get very frustrated.
The mom is basically being permissive to the son doing some dumb
I used to get
that.
very frustrated as a kid because it never made sense to me that like I was told I had to do certain things because I was a boy, or that I was told like even stupid things. Like I grew up with primarily my mother and my sister, and they made me do all the man things around the house, air quotes. And they'd be like, "Oh, you have to do that because you're a guy. You have to do this because you're a guy." And I'm just like, "Well, how come?" Like, and I had to do a lot of chores, and my sister didn't. Like, let's say, like mowing the lawn or raking leaves or taking the trash out. My sister did like nothing.
She could have fucking done that shit. Hell, your mother could have done that shit.
Yeah, I was told. Well, she's a girl, so she doesn't have to do it. I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense.
What if you weren't? What if you weren't even born? What if it was just mom and your sister? Like, real shit. How the fuck you gonna get that shit done? Like, and that's the thing. Motherfuckers don't think about. It's like, you gotta like. There is the whole gendered shit does not make sense.
No,
like
none of it makes sense.
I used to get kicked out of kitchens, and when I used to go to church, I used to get kicked out of the kitchen. Like, oh, a kitchen is a woman's place. Why you always want to be around women and stuff like that? I'm like, I just like cooking.
Yeah,
I mean, I like being in the kitchen. That's just what it is. I still have a hard time being in the kitchen and cooking because of that shit. I'm working on it. I'm cooking a lot more for myself, and I'm trying to encourage my girlfriend to cook with me and stuff like that. It's the same thing. Where it's the same thing. Like, oh, the men have to be the providers. They have to work and they have to do all this shit. And I'm like, yo, women work too. What the fuck? Like, and if you make more money than me, why do I gotta sit down here? If you make more money than me, why do I gotta sit here and fucking provide for you?
Right. That's like actually part of a that's actually part of a conversation that I'm having with my my wife. Is she gets more in her day, like she feels better about herself in her day when she has purpose in her day, when she has a list of things to do in her day that are not chore based, that are not taking care of the kids based. Like when she goes to work, she's giddy as shit to go to work, right? And so me and her are talking about switching our roles where she goes to work predominantly and I'm the one taking care of the kids because it's just easier for me. Like, honest to God, give me an hour of nobody in the day. Fine. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can kind of figure out how to cook. I'm going to have to call you a lot about that, but I'll learn. And it's just that gender idea because she loves doing the yard work and I fucking hate being outside. And so she goes and mows the lawn, but then she'll come inside and be like, what are you cooking for lunch? Oh, here's what we have in here. Let me make that for you, right? We switch roles often. I mean, for one, she's got to accommodate me because I got my issues and she's got ADHD. So there are times where I have to accommodate her, right? Like, I don't like sleeping late in the day. So I wake up at 6, 7 in the morning, like every morning, regardless, right? But she'll sleep till 10 or 11. And when we first got together, I'd get pissy about it. But that was just me trying to hold her to a standard that ain't her. And now when she sleeps 10 or 11, I make sure there's a pot of coffee when she wakes up. Sometimes I pour it ahead of time and I hand it right to her and go, I hope you slept well, right?
Yeah, when me and my girlfriend, so right now I'm not really working, right? Mm-hmm. So I have more time to do this stuff when I'm staying with my girlfriend on the weekends, right? Mm-hmm. So I would get up in the morning, especially like if it's a Monday or a Thursday morning, right? I get up and when she goes to take a shower, I get up, I make her a cup of coffee, I make her a bagel with cream cheese because that's what she likes for breakfast.
Nice.
And I would get that set up for her by the time she gets out. Or I have it by the time she's like sitting down, ready, doing her makeup and getting ready for work, right? And that's what I always do. That's what I like to do. Like if I have to get up at like 6:30 in the morning, I can't do any of that. I have to leave. Yeah. So like I have to kind of like consider that shit. I have to hop in the shower at like 5:30 in the morning, whatever, right? Depending on where I'm working. And and when she spends the weekend here with me, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's the same thing. Like, I would get up, store, get breakfast, or if I have breakfast here, I cook the breakfast.
Yeah.
Like we sleep a little later and stuff like that. But like, I'm the type of person that's like, like I always try to remind her, it's like, look, I get that you believe it. A woman and blah, 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 and all this other shit. You have to recognize, one, you're making more money than me at this point in junction, right? Even like when I was working, because teachers don't really make that money. I don't have my license yet. I'm still working on that. You're making more money than me. So sometimes you got to spend a little bit more than me. And if we were to live together, we would have to, like, it's not going to be a 50-50 thing. Right. Why am I going to be left with little money? If the roles were reversed, I would never do that shit.
Right.
Like I would basically be like, okay, listen, if we're making $100,000 and you're making $40,000 a year and I'm making 60 and I'm talking about after taxes, then I'm like, yo, look, like and the rent, let's say the rent is $2,000. All right, you pay $800 of the rent. Mm-hmm. And you're going to pay $800 of the rent and I'm going to pay $1,200.
Right.
Like I'm going to it's going to be proportionate to what you're.
Yes, as it should be, because that's actually a real 50-50 partnership in the relationship, right? Yeah. I have the ability to contribute more in one way. You have the ability to contribute more in another way. And so that equals out.
And even with my ADHD and stuff like ADHD and autism and the things that I do, like there's certain things that I just cannot do. Like I am not the best with finances at all. Mm-hmm. Like, but she's really good at financing.
Right. So you let her do it.
Yeah, I let her do it. Or I try to encourage her to do it.
Right.
Right. And then like I'm very good at the emotional stuff. Like when she like I'm very good at like being that emotional support, or like I'm good at like, organizing and stuff like that. Her plate. So like, like I would do that. Like there's certain things that like we excel at that we excel at very well. Mm-hmm. Like I'm very good at like just getting her to relax and just do something that she wouldn't normally do. Yep. Because like when we first met, like she was not willing to be vulnerable at all. Like she was vulnerable with me like the second date. Yeah. She was like shocked at it. She was trying to like hold up this strong facade and everything like that. She really wouldn't play video games. Like she didn't know how to relax. She doesn't know how to relax a lot of the time because she's always had to work. Yeah. Always had to work on something. She was always doing something, always keeping busy and stuff. So for me, I'm like,
A
for
lot
me,
of
it's like if I push myself that far, I'm definitely gonna get burnt out. Like I burnt out twice doing that.
Mm.
So like I already know, like I did it twice. I'm not letting that shit get to a third time. I'm gonna take care of myself and like relax and just chill,
Right.
like and work within what I can work within. I'll say, yo, let's play a video game, let's watch TV, let's sit down, lay down and eat. We don't have to go out and do nothing.
Mhm.
Chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like relax. It's all good. And ain't no thing but a chicken. Let's just do this shit. You know what I mean? Like just
I haven't heard that
relax
in
for a
so
second.
long.
Oh, I can't relax because I know there's all this shit to do. Okay, let's fucking do this shit. But like just recognize, fuck out.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
but like the ideology, and it's both men and women, and it's
Mhm.
like, and this is why a lot of women are like, why the fuck are men having podcast mics? And I look at the same thing. I'm like, why are some of these women having podcast mics? Why are people who have this like toxic mentality about like what things should be,
Mm.
like the whole pick me mentality? It's like, yo, it's like, oh, pick me. I'm like trying to like, no, it's like y'all are single because y'all have this mentality, because most people don't have this mentality. Most people want to be equitable in a relationship. Most people want to have like that equality and the equity, and especially now as the generation is getting young, as the younger generation is coming up.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like for me, I'm like, yeah, and it's a lot harder to live right now because the cost of living is not keeping up with everything else. So like it's harder to live. Like me and my girlfriend haven't moved in because of that.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to have our own places. Even if we were just renting rooms, but it's easier for us to have our own places.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap. It ends up being cheaper in the long run. We can like we're like we can hope we can find something inexpensive that, and especially in New York City. And even then, I'm sitting there explaining to her like, yo, it's not gonna be where I'm paying 50% of everything. I'm like, I'm sorry, especially if I don't make more money than you. And the thing about it is, in my profession, I'm never like, I have a chance to catch up to her, but I will never make more.
Well, yeah, because you're a teacher.
And I know that already.
Yeah.
So like I know that already. Like if I go like work for the New York City Department of Education, I will start at like $80,000. I can get up to 100. Like I think 6-7 years after that, I can get into like the 6 digits. 100. Yeah, it's gonna be like $130,000 once you get like enough service years.
Yeah, and in New York, that's not even that much money.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask that. Is 130,000, a decent wage in New York?
You can live by yourself on 130,000.
Okay, you can live by yourself. Okay,
very easily, very easily. But like you're literally, things are gonna be tight.
Yeah,
like things are gonna be tight unless, especially if you got student loans and all that other shit that you gotta pay. Like things are gonna be tight. But once you clear out those debts and things get a little bit easier.
Okay.
But like you gotta find someone, but then you gotta make sacrifices. So like, for example, most people want to live in neighborhoods like Bushwick, Williamsburg, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights. They want to live in like Manhattan, in Long Island City, Greenpoint, those neighborhoods, anything that's close to Manhattan, they would want to live in. And people are trying to start to move into the mainland. So people start living in like Hunts Point and stuff like that. Hunts Point and the concourse area around down South Bronx and stuff like that, by close to Manhattan, very easy to get in there. People live near the trains and stuff like that. So people want to live near the trains. I live in Bensonhurst. I live in South Brooklyn. It's a lot cheaper to live. Like the trains are like, it's closer to Coney Island. It's a lot quieter. It's not really a lot out here. It's cheap to live out here. I'm the type of person, I don't mind traveling an hour to get to work, on the train, because it's like, okay, it's a sacrifice I'm making to save money.
Yeah.
But most people just want that convenience of living close to the city, being close to things, because most people don't really go outside of most people that move here from out of state, they don't really, they bring that same small town mentality with them, where they do not go outside of their neighborhood, or they don't really go outside of their neighborhood most often. Me, growing up here, I've been everywhere in New York City. I've been in so many different places in New York. It's to the point where I just want to go to the places that I'm familiar with. I just want to live in my artistic joy and just do whatever the fuck I want to do. Eat the same foods, whatever the case may be. The thing is like I'm all about making the sacrifice. Like having to live here, I'm all about making the sacrifices that I need to.
Which sometimes is a good way to be, right?
Say what?
Making those sacrifices. Sometimes it's a good way to be for the long term. Yeah, absolutely.
What-
I mean, most people, that's kind of a lesson most of us have to learn at some point is we need to be able to sacrifice here to get us here,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's whether it's following our goals or not. And actually, you just said something nice: being able to live in your autistic joy,
Yeah.
which I think to kind of sum up today with everything we've talked about, like autistic joy. That's what we're actually
You
looking
got a
for
Marie
at the end of the
Kondo all
day.
the neurotypical things you don't like.
Yeah, like we that's really what we want to be able to do at the end of the day is live in happiness with ourselves and hope to God that we find other people around us to live life with us, right?
Absolutely true.
Right.
And that's absolutely true.
So it's a
Like,
good way
that's
to
the
be.
thing. That's the thing. Like, you
Mhm.
know, being able to do the things that make you happy and
Mhm.
regulate you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like, and I'll wholeheartedly say that.
Mm.
Like, a lot of the time, especially if you're a late diagnosed,
Mhm.
get diagnosed. And late diagnosed, when I say late diagnosed, I mean diagnosed after grade school.
Get
So if
diagnosed.
you're
Oh.
getting diagnosed at like 19, 20 years old,
Yeah.
Get
or
diagnosed.
21 and up as an adult,
Yeah.
Get diagnosed.
like, it is hard. Like, the later you get diagnosed, the harder it is to want to live in joy.
Oh yeah.
And because you're depending on how you manage to mask all of that and how
Mhm.
long you've been masking all of it,
Joy.
it seems very foreign to be on.
Joy.
Oh,
Because
true.
especially when it is encouraged for you not to be yourself.
Absolutely
Because in
true.
society, you can't be yourself. You can't
Well.
be you. Like, I can't just start rattling off about trains and rattling off about socio-political stuff that I'm very passionate about,
Mhm.
or start running off the gamut about video games, about like chicken nuggets, or about like eating, like I or about teaching and
Yeah.
learning. I can't just start doing that a lot of times. There's times where, you know, like, my mom used to criticize me and say, like, oh, you look like the crazy homeless people outside, when I'm just stimming to my music and I have my music in my ear. I'm just bouncing. I'm like,
Yeah.
and moving my hands and tapping and doing whatever, you know,
Mhm.
to regulate myself, especially on a bus or on a train where there's
Yeah.
a lot of people. You know, like, as much as I can be around people and I love being around people, there's moments where I just don't, like, now I just don't really
Mm.
as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I can give a speech. I can give a speech. I can host a live. I can have a
Yeah.
conversation with people. Like, I get comfortable very easily.
Right.
It's just like in certain situations where it's like very awkward, where you're just with like strangers
Mhm.
like that, and you know, everybody's staring at you, like, everybody just staring at you, or like when you're doing it, you're getting like, it's kind of hard. But I said to myself, I said, no, I'm just gonna, if I need to rock, if I need to sway, rock, if I need to
Mhm.
pace, I'm gonna do it. If I need to tap my feet, if I'm listening to music, so I'm gonna allow myself to enjoy music. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get excited about things. I'm not gonna stop myself. I'm not gonna stop myself
Mhm.
from experiencing the happiness that I deserve to experience as a person, because of other people's judgment, because they don't understand what's going on in my brain. Sometimes, for some people, it is very easy to internalize that excitement and
Mhm.
be internally regulated.
Mhm.
For me, it's not that easy.
Right.
I'm having a rough day, and if things don't go the way I expect them to, because, like, having AuDHD, right? Being AuDHD, being autistic and
Mhm.
ADHD, it is literally a clash of, I want to do all the things, but I
Right.
can't do them, and I have to do things in a very particular way,
Yeah.
or else I can't do it. It is a clash of the
Mm.
two. It is literally, I want to do all the things,
Sounds
but I need to
familiar.
do these
Yeah.
things in a
Yeah. A little bit.
particular way, or
Yep.
else I'm not going to be able to do it.
Right.
Right. And it's so, people don't understand
Mhm.
internally, because it is an invisible disability, right?
Right.
It is not like you're crippled, or it's not like you have Down syndrome. You can see somebody with Down syndrome,
Right.
palsy, or someone who has more profound autism or severe
Yeah, absolutely.
severe autism or higher support needs. And like they're like it's not like they have a look, but you can tell like certain things. They tell certain things like you can see them externalizing the behaviors a lot more, externalizing the stuff.
Well, yeah, because they're far more visible. They're far more visible in that way. And that's kind of
people like us three.
Yes.
When we're able to go out in public and like you can't tell just by looking at this, you can't tell. Like I'm not someone that will just wear like I'm not someone that's gonna wear the same clothes over and over until I'm tired of it, right? I mix up my clothes. I like that stuff. But the one thing that's pretty constant about me that people don't know, like yesterday I was telling my girlfriend I felt really weird without it. Like I go everywhere, I wear hats everywhere. Like I feel so weird without it.
Sure.
You know, like I felt so weird. Right. I was like, oh my God, like I noticed that like I'm feeling the wind blowing on my head. And my girl's like, oh, God forbid you don't wear a hat. I'm like, I just feel weird. And, you know, and that's the thing for me. That's always been the thing. I liked wearing hats. And like nobody can say they have never seen me without a hat. Like, and that's the thing.
Take it off. I said, take it off.
Like, I mean, shoot, I'm bold. I don't care. Like, I mean, like, and I look good, but like at the same time, like outside, I'm never without a hat, and most people who know me know that, right?
Yeah.
And then like, and then me wearing pants, it's always black jeans. I don't really like wearing blue jeans like that. I like wearing black pants. And I like wearing my hat because I like to the shirt, the sneaker, and the hat will accessorize for me.
Right, because that's your preferences.
I'm not a big fashion head, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't really like I don't mind how I look. I don't really pay attention so much to how I look. I just want to be comfortable. Right. That's the big thing for me. I just want to be comfortable in what I don't really like get super sad. But if there's there better not be a tag. Like there's a tag in the shirt. I don't mind it. Tags don't really bother me too much. But when they do, I rip the shit out.
Oh, no, I think quite a lot of us do. So I think quite a lot of us do rip the tags out of our shirts. But Clint, we've actually taken quite a lot of your time. And I don't want to necessarily take any more than we need to.
We're vibing, that's all.
Yeah, well, exactly. We're having a fun conversation. But I think we've gone quite a time. And I don't want to necessarily take up any more of yours. I appreciate what little you've given us so far. I say little, but but anyway, but we'd love to have you on another time because you're definitely a human being who's got a lot to say, and we'd love to have you on another time. All right?
You'll just let me know when. Let me know when you want me on, and I'll arrange everything.
What's your message to the world right now?
Yes.
My message to the world right now is essentially let's like enjoy yourself, man. Just like have fun. Like don't let anybody shame you into not enjoying the things you enjoy.
Enjoy video games and trains.
Yes,
exactly. Just like live. Listen, even if you're allistic, live in the joy that you have, the natural joy that you have in your life. If you don't,
that's a very good point.
People used to make fun of me for my obsession with Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
There you go.
But I got made fun of for being a fan of John Cena. Let's be real. Like I don't care.
There's nothing wrong with John Cena. Nothing wrong with John Cena. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode.
Tune in next week where we give Nick the cure again.
Yeah, please give me the cure. I need it. I am super autistic. I don't know. Anyway,
I have a running joke about an autism cure that I came up with.
But tune in for our next episode. We've got another awesome guest coming on, another person from TikTok who's actually been doing a lot of activism for the last 20 years in the autism community. Check us out on that episode. But thank you very much. Like, follow, subscribe on every social media. And if I knew the actual words for all these social media things, I would say them out loud. But I don't. So thank you.
Pee pee poo poo.